Hey there, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. So recently there has been a lot of discourse going around surrounding the channel The Young Turks, and mainly the two lead hosts of that channel, Anna Kasparian and Senk, who have fallen down a transphobic and anti-trans rhetoric rabbit hole. And I'm not going to go into all of the nuances of that specific situation because it's a whole thing, and there are many more people who know the ins and outs of the specifics with The Young Turks and their channel than I do. And I would highly recommend this video by Benjamin Carollo, where she goes into it in much greater detail and why she eventually left the Young Turks where she used to be working. However, there is one element of this discourse that I did want to discuss, because one of the things that Anna and Senk are discussing on their channel as like the reasons that they are like at odds with the transgender community, who they frame as all transgender activists, instead of, trans people who just happen to exist, is surrounding the issue of trans people in sports. Now, trans people in sports has become a right-wing culture war issue, and, Anna and Senk are sort of parodying this, honestly, this fairly commonly held mainstream line of thought that is like trans people and trans women specifically should not be allowed into sports, and that this is like the thing that many right-wing people are latching onto as the major wedge issue on trans people, because it is, quite honestly, one of the most easily misunderstood elements of discussing trans rights and trans issues. And I just kind of want to break that down for a quick hot second. The reason trans women in women's sports has become such a wedge issue is because for all the other trans issues that we discuss, a lot of it is like very clearly pointed out by like, if trans women are women, we understand this idea that women can be a variety of things. Like, trans women are women, but we are not cisgender women. We are not the same. And there are differences between trans women and cis women. There might be many, many overlaps. The large spectrum of what womanhood is. And recognizing that trans women are women is just recognizing the already diversity of what women can be within that umbrella term. And so when we talk about, trans women being allowed in women's bathrooms, all of these things, we can understand like the wide breadth of what womanhood is. But when it comes to sports specifically, sports has built itself up on this being this natural segregation between men and women, that men and women have to inherently be at odds with each other in a sports setting because men are strong and dominant and will always win, and this is the best way to segregate sports. And that's made itself seem natural and normal. That just seems as like part of how we think about sports and competition. Like, literally, sports is built up upon that assumption, and it's made itself so ubiquitous that it's become just the natural, assumed way we think about sports. But in actuality, there are many things that we could discuss about how sports is segregated and how we don't have to think about sports in those ways. For example, there are many women, cisgender women, regardless, who are better at sports than their cisgender men counterparts in specific sports. It also forgets the fact that many sports organizations, outlets, and even like literally the facilities that sports buildings are built up on are often there to accommodate men's bodies, men's abilities, like cisgender men's bodies and abilities. There's this wonderful book that I think I have back here on the shelf somewhere. I don't see it right off the top of my head, but it's called Like a Girl, where one of the top Olympic athletes talks about how like literally a lot of the systems that she was working in when she was going to the Olympics, when she was working to be a top tier athlete, were literally just not built to accommodate women's bodies. Like sports health organizations weren't there to accommodate women's bodies at all. And so it already puts women at a disadvantage just by the way these structures and infrastructures have been built up and made to seem like this is the way things are. Also, thinking about sports in terms of a specific version of competition is also a weird way to think about sports. Sports don't have to be this like, we need to beat each other, we're constantly gonna like just ground them into dust. But there are other ways that we can think about things that would be, a different way of interpreting how we think about the system of sports. Like, yeah, competition is an inherent part of it, but there's different ways than thinking of it like about a battle between will. But all of these elements are things that have been made invisible and fundamental to how we think about sports and the system of sports, so much more so than even our whole society in general, which is a much more complex machine than, the sports system is. So when we get to including trans women in women's sports specifically, is because all of these things have been made to seem natural and normal and just a part of how we build up and think about sports, then it just, people like look at that and be like, oh yeah, of course trans women don't belong belong in women's sports because they have, they have biological features that align with men, or they're biologically male, or whatever transphobic nonsense that would spew. And because we have so normalized all of these things in sports, people go at that. It's like, yeah, that makes sense to me because this is the way that sports should be. It's why it's important to discuss when we discuss about talking about, trans women and women's sports. I see even so many people that I see in progressive space, even beyond the Young Turks, like people who I really respect, they'll even say like, oh yeah, there's some some justifiable reasons for excluding trans women from women's sports. And I go, no, what we need to be thinking about is how we, instead of just trying to accommodate trans women into the way we have sports today, or exclude trans women so we can keep sports going the same way that we've always been, why don't we think about ways that we can recreate these systems, destroy this system, in order to make it so that we don't have to exclude people, that we don't have to, hurt trans women, exclude trans women. And by the way, these systems not only are there to, hurt women generally, cis or trans, but they also are built upon excluding many black women specifically as well. It's why you'll often see when people create, lines of like, this is what we allow, like certain testosterone levels or whatever, so we can exclude trans people. It also excludes many black women as well, trans or cis, because the idea of what a woman is often built upon ideas of colonialization, white supremacy, of like women have to be this way. And so you'll often see a lot of people of color, black women specifically, being excluded because sports is literally built around all these assumptions that are just baked into colonialism, white supremacy, yada, 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 all the horrible capitalism, whatever nonsense things. So, that's just something that I want to point out with this discussion that I've seen, come back. It's constantly coming back up over and over and over again, but specifically with this Young Turk situation. That was like their wedge issue. Like, this is a losing thing. It's not going to win elections. And like, no. This is the discussion that we like. You can easily say like, look at how artificial all of this bullshit is on how we think about gender. It is all built up to accommodate these systems that are not built for anyone but those who the system wants to reach the top. And we would have other people reach the top, or we would have other people feeling comfortable, be able to take place and take part in these things if we built them in a much more inclusive way from the ground up. Oh, also, I'm not talking about sports anymore. I'm talking about our entire society.